We have 2 more coming up and maybe a pop-up. So we're hoping you can join us for another program. We're super, super, super excited to have this small press spotlight on Raid Press and to have so many talented creators in behind us to talk about the industry, to talk about the work that they do, to talk about the upcoming projects that they have, and to talk about what it's like to work in a small press and what it's like to work collectively. So our host for this session is Brahm Wiseman from Heroes. Most of you know Brahm, and if you don't, get to know him. He has an amazing comic book shop across the street. He now has villains next door as well, so if you're looking for product, that's where to go. I'm going to hand it off to Brahm shortly, but first I'm going to welcome Eric, Sheldon, Dax, and Ramón. Let's give them a big warm welcome. So for you. Oh, you don't need this.
Yep.
This is for you guys.
That's for them. Welcome, everybody. I guess we're going to talk, all things small press and comics and creative arts. I guess we've got names, but maybe we just go down the line and say who you are. Maybe like just some past projects and what you're up to now. We'll get more into detail with those, but
for sure.
Want to start, Eric?
Oh, Eric.
Hello, I'm Eric Vedder, concept director at Digital Extremes. Also work with the Raid and past projects, Udon, Darkstalkers, currently Arden. Some cool art for To Seal the Sun inside the book.
Hi everyone, I'm SM Carter. I also go by Sheldon Carter. I am an author.
2 names.
Yeah, 2 names. I have 2 names. So just to keep
I have 3. It's fine.
Okay, awesome. I'm the author of a book called To Seal the Sun. I've also worked with Raid on multiple anthologies, and I'm a game developer that works at Digital Extremes.
I am. My name is Dax Gordon. I'm a freelance illustrator. I've done everything from traditional animation through to concept art for video games. My personal project, which is Forest Folk, which you can see books over there, and I got lucky enough to be on the wall there, is my personal baby. And I've been doing that through Raid and Ramón here. It's been an amazing experience. So I'm sure we're going to get into all that kind of stuff, but that's my connection with Raid, is the Forest Folk comic. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
My name is Ramón Pérez. I've been a freelance artist now probably close to 30 years. I've worked in children's books, magazines. I've done work for Marvel, DC, various publishers throughout the industry. Over the past several years, I've also started the Raid Press imprint through Raid, which is a studio in Toronto that's been around for 21 years. So I've been doing a lot, lots of gray hairs to show for it, but I'm excited to be working with such amazing people and helping new creators get their work out there. So yeah, let's chat.
So, I mean, when I showed up today, I assumed all you guys knew each other. What's the connecting thread? I assume most of it's Raid, but maybe there's some.
We've also met through the industry. I first met Sheldon at a bar in London.
Classic, yeah.
Yeah. But I think Eric through Udon, early days. We're both Sheridan graduates, mutual friends, but I guess eventually Raid became the tie that binds through a lot of the projects, because we always had these ambitions to work on our own stuff. Eric through Arden, me through various projects. And, you know, we used to have a collective back in the early 2000s called Transmission X, which was a web-based comic collective. And Eric and I started that with several other artists like Cameron Stewart and Carl Kerschel and a few others. And that kind of died out. And then, we just kind of embraced Raid and the brand in the maybe 2010 or 12, I guess, and ran with it. And
Okay, so can I interrupt though?
Yeah,
Because you said how you met him, and you said how you met him, but you didn't say how you met me.
I don't know who you are.
It's right over you.
Yeah, this one.
Well, I actually met you through Eric.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the industry
I remember.
stuff,
It was at San Diego Comic-Con in 2012 or 11.
You're
And
impressing me because I don't remember that.
You were yelling at me from the top floor of a bar.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
The trend here.
You're working on Bravo Man.
That's right. Yeah. Webcomic stuff. Yeah.
So comics brought us all together, basically. Story.
Well, that's what I like to hear.
Yeah.
And just for those who don't know, what is Raid?
So Raid began as a studio of 4 guys: Chip Zdarsky, Ben Shannon, Kagan McLeod, and who am I missing here? Oh, and Cameron Stewart.
Cam Stewart, yeah.
Back in 2002, it was three graduates from Sheridan College out in Oakville. They wanted to work in an environment where they kind of maintain like the whole, like they didn't want to work from home. And basically I was the first replacement member. I replaced Kagan back in 2006. And the studio just kind of grew. People, like at our highest point, maybe we were about 20 members, the majority of which were working for Image, DC, or Marvel. And it's become a kind of a community creative collective where artists in Toronto can rent space. Now we're not, the majority of the members aren't comics. People work in animation, advertising, graphic design, television, film. But a lot of I think the tie that binds is a lot of the creators who enter our space love comics or love telling their own stories. And that's kind of what brings us together. We're all storytellers and we're doing things on the side. Like Eric, who has a full-time job being an art director, you know, but at the same time, he's moonlighting, doing a graphic novel. Same with like Dax or Sheldon or myself. We might create all day for one company, and then at night, we're moonlighting and creating our graphic novels or storytelling or whatever it might be, right?
So I mean, how important, and coming from Digital Extreme with Sheldon and Eric, how important is a creative space? Like, is that great for networking, meeting other like-minded people, picking up potential future gigs or people to work with? Like,
I mean, we were talking about this earlier because Eric's just going back into the office after a long time of being absent from the office because he was working from home. And there is a synergy, I think, to working in a real time with other creatives. Like maybe, I don't know, you want to touch upon that, Eric? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's
I don't want to do all the talking.
Yeah, it's Ramon's show. So, no, it's great. I think it's good to be around other people that are creative, especially when you hit your lows and you're trying to be more like just to kind of
Motivated.
push you into getting your stuff done. Can I swear?
I think so, yeah.
I think it's being recorded
Shit done. It's and also just to kind of like bounce back ideas off of and stuff and kind of inspire each other. I think that's great.
A little competition maybe doesn't hurt too.
Yeah,
Healthy
for sure,
competition, yeah. Mandate for me with Digital Extremes, I'm trying to hire and only have people come in and work in the office from now on. Moving forward, the new hires, because I want to cultivate that kind of community. So I think it's beneficial. I think everybody wins, and you know they also grow faster as an artist too. I think that's one of the bigger benefits that I don't think people realize is when you're at home and you're kind of by yourself, you're kind of working in a bubble, but when you're around other people, you kind of get you get better.
Yeah,
and I've seen it happen time and time again. So
I remember late nights at Raid, like I'd be working. I remember I was working on Tale of Sand, and Francis Manipal was working at the Flash at the time, and we'd be like, just the two of us. You hear a jingle of keys, and we're like, "Are you leaving?" He says, "No, I'm going to work another." Oh, okay, I'll work too. Like you just be like constantly egging each other on, just to like go into the night, and you see what maybe a guy left on his table the night before, and you'd be like, "Oh, that's really dope. I gotta one up that tomorrow, up my game or whatever it is." So it is a friendly sort of inspiration, and I think there definitely is a sense of collaboration in the sense that when you work at home or you're going on like now I know everybody loves working from home after the pandemic and there's Zoom and you're chatting and stuff like that, but there's a synergy that happens in real time when you're sitting beside another creative individual that just does not happen in the web space. It's just like because you're just firing off of each other right there, and I don't know. I haven't seen it captured yet online.
Yeah, I take it you did have shut down for a little while during the pandemic.
We did. I kept going.
It was still a work. Yeah.
I went in every day during the pandemic. Just took back alleys, avoid the cops and that sort of thing. But yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about. I don't know what we're going to talk about. The creative process, I guess. Let's talk about how much stuff are you working on right now that you're able to work on for yourself or that's work for hire. We all have to pay the bills. It's hard to roll the dice and like really take a vision and get it out there. I know some of you have full-time jobs, but how much is freelance and how much is sort of a vision for something you would like to create for yourself?
Well, I can jump in because for me, I've been doing work for hire for, I mean, it's been slow recently, but I mean, that happens in the industry, right? So, but like I've done concept art for places, like there's a studio out west that I was doing video game designs for a couple of years. And that's when Forest Folk started because I wanted to do my own thing. I was kind of burnt out on doing the 9-to-5 grind, and I was like really getting inspired to do my own thing. And so that's when I kind of fell upon, it was just right place, right time. I have some characters, I used to animate stuff. Comic strip could be fast, I could do one a week, that kind of thing. And it just kind of snowballed from there. I just forced myself to keep doing it. And before I knew it, I had enough to make a book, and then a 2 and 3. And I'm sitting there going, okay, well, at this point I hadn't even talked to Raid about making it yet. And so I had like all this backlog. It's been going for years. And so that's when I was lucky enough to talk to Raid at a Raid retreat and get the ball rolling on the Kickstarter. And I got a book, and now 3. But that's been something for me that, like, even when I'm actually kind of happy right now that it's kind of light work-wise because I'm really getting to focus on my personal stuff. So I've been I was in a funk for a while, like creatively, like kind of like that artist block thing. But once I came out of that, I'm just feeling really good about it and really focusing on all these different projects. Like I've got another, like the next Raid anthology I got to start working on, and more of my comic strips. I've got another book I'm working on too, and yeah, it's just.
I think it's interesting. I think artists, and I can't think of anybody else. I mean, maybe musician, or I mean, the arts in general. I think it's one of those things like you'll never find people who draw all day and then to relax, they'll draw at night and do something else creatively. Like like my dad was a mechanic growing up, and like my mom was a nurse. She didn't go nursing after hours, or dad didn't fix other people's cars after hours.
But creators,
we just have this itch, I think, and I think a lot of us, especially when you work for a company, even freelancing, I work for Marvel and DC and all these guys, it's like you enjoy playing in these companies' sandboxes, whether it's drawing a Spider-Man or a Batman or a Mickey Mouse, whatever it might be, but there's always a creative itch, I think. And maybe not for everybody, but I'd say the majority, they always want to put something out there of their own, leave their mark, whether it's for their family, their kids, or just something they just want to tell the world about. And it is a difficult balance, I think, and it's hard to do, like alluding back to the web collective we did back in the early 2000s, Transmission X, like that was us putting our stuff out there. But back then, we didn't have the capacity to monetize those things. Whereas today, creators have Patreon, they have Substack, they have Instagram, they can monetize any platform, they can print on demand through Amazon or local print shops. Like there's so much potential to get your work out there to people these days. It's actually quite amazing and liberating. And all you have to do is dedicate that time to doing it.
Yeah, I want to get back to that sort of how to market and promote yourself. But just for Eric and Sheldon, you've got full-time gigs, so you're obviously still have this creative itch that you want to get something else out there. How do you fit that into a creative work life?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting balance and an interesting outlet, right? You're going to have situations where even, as much as you don't draw all day and then go home and draw all day.
No.
There are times where you kind of use art as a way to get through maybe the frustrations of your day. And then there's times where I think this is what makes being a part of a collective so interesting, is that it's not competition, but it's encouragement. It's like when I see Dax is putting out another book, that's kind of lighting a fire on
Happens a lot.
Yeah. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. There's 3 of them over there. Yeah. It lights a fire. And when we go to, as a group, we go to conventions and we're sitting there and we're talking to people. We're engaging them in the stuff that we've created. We're talking about our stories. And
This guy's pitch is electric. You just ask him tonight for his pitch. It's real good.
We'll do it.
All right.
But yeah, I think it's really cool because you start building off of each other. The first time I was pitching my book at a convention, it was just flopping like crazy. It was like, and what I was doing is I was sitting next to Dax, and I was watching him give stickers out. I was taking notes,
Okay.
and you're giving stickers out to people
What
and
not
you're
to do.
engaging them, and I'm like, oh wow, this is how you do it. And so I had bookmarks Eric had made, and I started giving out bookmarks to get people to come and talk
Fast
to me.
fast forward to the part where like then you kicked my ass. Like then he just started selling like crazy. Like it was amazing to watch. Like
But I do remember him being, you were quite electrified by the experience of engaging a readership one-on-one with your book, right? There's nothing more satisfying than having, even you, like,
oh yeah, for sure.
Dax has been doing this webcomic for 6 years, 7 years
More,
now.
probably getting close to this.
And like now you're having kids coming up, returning, loving the characters, and having that kind of like touchstone at
it's
these
the best,
shows.
yeah.
It's a whole different experience.
Yeah.
Experience.
Yeah, for sure.
And Eric, how do you found in the balance?
He makes the drinks.
I make drinks in my bar. No, it's up and down, right? Like some days are good, some days are bad. You try to balance it with other things. Try to play some video games, take your mind off, and go for a walk, just kind of get inspired. But conventions really help, and the banter at the table, and definitely interacting with fans and talking to people is such a boost. You just want to get back to it. So it's tough. I'm not saying it's easy at all. So.
I guess with like video game design, your individuality is lost a little bit, right? Like you know what you've done, but it doesn't come back to you. The accolades don't necessarily come back to you. Like a comic where you put your name on it, you put your stamp on it. Yeah, I guess is that partly what gives you the itch? It's like, well, I've got these skills. They're obviously paying the bills, and I'm creating something great, which is very rewarding.
Yeah.
But it's not mine.
Yeah, there's a bit of that for sure. I mean, what's great about like Digital Extremes is they kind of pump up. They definitely. I'm lucky in my position because I get to work on some projects in the game where my name gets thrown around on dev streams. So it's nice, but that's not usually the typical situation. But yeah, I don't know. Something else.
You got nothing else.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Well, I was going to say that I just kind of want to take a step back because one of the cool things is that Eric and I we work together. So we're working on kind of cyberpunk
Thriller.
set in a city that runs on blood. Anyways, we're working on a story right now together, and I think that's the other part. That's like we have that motivation to work after work comes from the fact that we have a partnership, and I think that's a lot of times in comics. That's the way it works as well, right? The comics, a lot of times you have a writer and an artist, and you have whatever, a lot of other people.
But usually your writer, like if I'm assuming in like the Marvel DC world, you just get scripts. You're not necessarily friends and having
you
cigars
just,
and
get a script
whiskey and enjoying your. You guys have a cool relationship where you actually like each other.
Very
and,
cool.
Yeah.
Just barely.
Which is partly what you're trying to cultivate it, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite parts being part of an artist collective now I've been there probably 16, 17 years now. And one of my favorite parts is witnessing creatives come in and just sometimes just by who you're sitting beside, you're now collaborating. Like it's this energy that would never have happened because these people never met, but because they're sitting together at a show or at an event or even at the tables at the studio, just like Light Bander might turn into a graphic novel, or I've seen animation pictures come out of it. I've seen novel, like all kinds of projects that just happen through this creative synergy in real time, just because two people randomly rented a table beside each other in our space, right? And that's the magic I find that kind of gets lost if you're working from home by yourself or just engaging in Zoom calls or meetings, as kind of the world has kind of gone into that realm. And it was actually funny because like we lost a lot of members during the pandemic because a lot of people were like, oh, we can't go there, so we had a mass exodus in 2020, but then 2021, like I think it was end of 2021, we had about 8 new members join within the span of a month because people were so burnt out from being at home and they wanted to like engage with other people. We had entrepreneurs, we had artists, writers, animators, and some were still with us. Other people maybe stayed for 6 months and moved on somewhere else. But it's actually really, I think, humans need that kind of connection, I think, especially creative individuals. As a guy who worked from home for a decade, I would be itching to go out every day and just talk ideas, shop. I love talking with these guys about future plans, story.
Well, I mean, drawing and writing are very singular activities.
No, they are, yeah.
you're stuck in your head and you're stuck with that piece of
Yeah,
paper
we
or
don't
that
do
tablet or
it. Yeah,
whatever it is.
exactly. You know, it's an odd path to take, basically.
It's a great path to take. I mean, as a retailer, I'm the guy that I'm here to preach about comics. Like I'm here to promote them. I love comic books. I love the medium. I think it's the greatest medium. But it's a niche medium. At the end of the day, comic book culture is huge. It exploded over the last 20 years, but people aren't necessarily engaging with comics all that much. I think 40, 50 years ago, they were a much more mainstream form of entertainment. But it expanded so much that now I think everybody's got a couple graphic novels, but they're not regular readers of graphic novels. So I think that it's nice. More people have graphic novels in their library. Young people read them. They engage in manga or like scholastic graphic novels. But I always say, like, really the hardcore audience for comics, probably 5 to 10% of them also create comics. Like everybody, there's a lot of comics out there. If you look out at like the weekly releases for comics, just that are distributed, not that are self-distributed, it's a lot of comics. And then there's a whole history of the last 100 years. So I'm always like, I'll try and promote what I love. I'll try and hand sell what I love. Obviously, the big companies here, Marvel and DC, do their best to promote, but I don't know what they do. Like they put out catalogs, they put ads in comic books, they do a little bit of web stuff. But how do you promote yourself, or how do you promote comics in this day and age? And sorry, before you get into that, I know Kickstarter is a thing. If your name, I know some very successful Kickstarters have happened. For the most part, what I know on Kickstarter, it's a great thing to get yourself published. It pays for the back end, but it doesn't pay the rest. Like it's not the profit on the book necessarily in a lot of cases. So yeah, in today's day and age, how do you get a book onto a shelf and then get people to go to the store to get it, or drive them online to get it?
Like, could you tell me what that is?
That's why I'm asking, right? I pull in things that I think are amazing. I try my best, but the thing that I think is amazing and does not have sales record, I'm going to get 5 copies and hope that the one that I take home, I'm going to sell the other 4. Now, if there's a lot of comic stores in the world, there's a lot of bookstores. If everybody did that, that's a pretty good number of books sold. But a lot of creators, I mean, their time is so focused on creating this thing. They might go to cons and hand sell it, which is a great opportunity. But for the most part, it goes on the shelf, and there it is. They're on to the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, I remember having a conversation with a fellow studio member. He's an entrepreneur, and he was flabbergasted that, like, I'm working like on a series, and he's like, I never actually read the final version of what I work on because I'm so busy going on to the next thing. Because it is a job. You're creating, and then you're done, and you're on the next issue. He's like, and I work a lot with for the past 10 years, I worked with Marvel quite a bit, and I would get Marvel script. So a Marvel script is basically where you get like a paragraph or two, which describes the whole issue, but there's no dialogue. It's just like, Spider-Man is angry with the Green Goblin. They banter back and forth. Green Goblin yells. They have a fight. He throws a bomb. Building gets blown up. Spider-Man gets away. And then you illustrate that over 20 pages, and then the writer goes in and dialogues it. I would never actually know what the dialogue was half the time, because after I was done my part, I was done. I'm moving on to the next one. So it's an interesting thing. Like you're part of a assembly line process with a lot of the mainstream titles, whereas working on graphic novels, like these guys creating their own properties, you're in it from beginning to end. You're the guy, whether you're collaborating or you're an individual, you're creating something from scratch and getting your voice out there and getting your vision. And it's hard to do that with a monthly comic, and I completely lost track of like
it's like promotion.
Promotion, yeah.
I'm trying to get. How do you get? What do you
book?
think the best way to get somebody to open that book is? Not, let alone buy it.
So
Right,
I mean,
right.
I think for
Pick it
us,
up off the shelf, whatever that is. Pick it up
Yeah.
off the con table.
conventions, I think it's been our biggest thing because you're actually
You
making
can
a
interact
one-on-one
with people,
connection.
right?
Yeah,
And
but that's a full-time gig. You can't be creative and
no, but we do
full days at a con. Trying to
we
hand sell your
do
books.
quite a bit of. I think I have like a dozen cons booked for this year. Some small,
That's
some
a dozen
larger.
days you can't draw comics.
It's true. That's why you have less
And
comics
you
this
need,
year.
and if you're traveling, you need
Yeah.
a day to recoup that.
Oh yeah,
Get
for
there.
sure. No, but I think there's
But
There's nothing-
you do tend to see knock-ons too. Like I think that the one thing that like I think I agree with you that the cons are like they're kind of you're there and it feels a little one and done-ish.
Mhm.
I'm lucky because I have like an audiobook version of my book and I have Kindle versions, and I always see the waves start. Like every time I go to a convention, I have then people are posting reviews of like
Yeah.
my Goodreads page gets 3 more clicks. My Amazon reviews get 3 more things, and that helps the algorithm, and so more people start buying the book. So
Yeah.
I don't mean to say that it's not like this isn't at scale. I'm not Elon Musk with with books.
yet.
Not yet. But the reality is that I think for independent creators, the strength of going and actually interacting with fans cannot be underestimated.
Yeah.
It's really, I think that's the way to build the momentum.
Yeah.
It's not the end game, but it's a really good,
Well, it's a brick in the foundation. Like it's like because
I can attest to the social media aspect of it in a sense. I mean, by no means have I broken that code either, but there's like with the internet, as Ramon was saying earlier, right? Like you have all these new options to get yourself out there, right? So I knew when I was doing Forest Folk in the beginning, I was like, I'm going to post this and make a website. Like I knew it was going to be a webcomic. I wasn't going to get it in the newspaper. I was going to, even though it looks like a newspaper comic, because I grew up on those, but I knew it was going to be a digital thing. So I was just like, I put it on Instagram, I put it on my Tumblr page, I put it on a Facebook page and stuff like that. And over the I don't even do the analytics and see the Google page to show I don't even know how many people read it, right? It's been going for 7 years. It could be like 30 people reading it. I don't know. But the Kickstarter actually is where we found that there were actually people must be reading it or fans of mine that wanted to buy it, because the first Kickstarter, other than your parents that buy 30 copies, right?
well, your mom only got one.
Yeah, it's true. She sent it back. It was that was my first example of the work I've been putting into just kind of posting it and being very regular with posting. Paid off because we got the Kickstarter covered and then some, it's been like that since. But growing the audience is, if somebody has the magic pill, let me know, because I would love to. You always want more people to be able to read it, but we're working on that. Like the studio's working on different avenues for that, and I'm always trying to self-promote, find new ways to self-promote.
Well, promotion generally costs money. I mean, if you look at movies, that's how they get their word.
Oh yeah,
they're advertising those movies, they're pushing them.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think with the one aspect of creators, like especially the indie creators, is building up that repertoire with your audience. And like when I first started as a freelance artist, I worked in tabletop gaming, and I kind of wanted to do my own thing, so I started a webcomic, and then I started a second webcomic, and those kind of grew over the years because it's like, people talk about it and they share it somewhere else, and they post a funny strip or they share the comic strip through like whether it's social media or just the website or through email, and you kind of start growing your audience. And I remember I looked at the metrics, and like I remember when I was doing Kookaburra, which was a graphic novel I did back in the early 2000s, and like week 1 was like 1,000 people read it. Week 2 was like 5,000. Week 3 it's 40,000, and it just keeps going and going and going. And when I did my Kickstarter, kind of like what Dax was saying, is like you then see those accolades come forward or come back to you, where you've built up this trust with your audience, and now they're coming back going, hey, you gave us this comic for free for so long. Now it's our chance to pay you back and pick up your book, whether it's through a publisher or indie or Kickstarter, whatever it might be. But it's a thing about building a trust with your readership or your potential readership, and letting them know and there are so many avenues, and like I look at metrics all the time. There's no clear answer. Like I remember when I did my Kickstarter, I think 0.5% came from my Instagram, which is my highest social media account. The majority of people came from my newsletter, which are people I had been collecting emails from for 30 years. As when I started in tabletop gaming, children's books, whatever, you always I would say it's like a conga line, your career. You always gain followers as you move throughout your career. They kind of latch on and they hold on, and you have those true fans that follow you. And that's the other thing you can do. There's no one right answer. There's no like Twitter's like I know Sheldon, the majority you had a lot of followers come from your Twitter because you had a big Twitter following. For me, it was my newsletter. Everybody's different. And
I was gonna say the other thing is that there's I mean, this is one of the benefits to being, you know, the small press that we are, is that you could look at our Kickstarters and you could see how many people from the Kickstarters had just backed other raid Kickstarters. So it's like as a group, we're building faith in our audience, right? So like people who read Forest Folk, well, there's a percentage of those people who, like, if you look at To Steal the Sun and you look at Forest Folk, there's not a big crossover. Like, no. I don't think.
But every campaign we do, we see a percentage grow from 2 to 5 to 10 that cross over and buy more of our books, right? You know, it's like your Marvel zombies from the 70s. It's like they will buy our stuff because they trust us and the stuff we create, basically.
Yeah, I think one key word there too was free. Like, I hate to say it because that's not how any of us get paid.
I believe in free. Like, there is a...
I think it's also what people are used to. I mean, people are used to nowadays, streaming services and whatever the illegal download is, but they're getting at least a taste for free. But once you build that audience by giving it to them, they'll reward you with money.
Yeah, like when we were kids, like you go to the spinner rack, you get like $10, you get 10 comics. Yeah. Now you get $10, you get maybe 2. You know what I mean? And when you can pay $10 to get unlimited Netflix for a month, or actually it's $19 now, but you know, so it's like a hard medium to get people into people's hands, but.
Yeah, especially printing costs now, and to self-publish a book. Yeah, that $5 Marvel comic is more like $10 for you to make any money off of it a lot of the time.
Oh yeah.
So to get somebody to invest that $10, they almost have to know what they're getting into first.
For sure, yeah.
You know, webtoons and that really are their way. I mean, you keep asking for the magic answer. All that I see in my store, and for, you know, other than hand selling, other than getting to know people's tastes and say like, you like that, I think you'll like this. Is you mentioned reviews. Like when there's a big book that's making top 10 of the year lists, that book will sell once it gets buzzed that way. And the other thing is just media tie-ins, right? Yeah. If it was, you know, once Scott Pilgrim got that movie deal, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, if you're lucky, for sure. I remember it being a release party,
which shouldn't be your goal.
No, but I mean, it shouldn't be your goal, but it definitely is a nice moneymaker when it happens. But I remember, I think the other part is like stores like yours, and we worked with a few other retailers around Ontario. Is like the community that happens around comic shops. That's for me, like growing up. I think Dax probably a little bit too, but you know, like I would go to my comic shop. That's where I met my friends. We would hang out. We would read comics. I'd like duck in below the bins and like read Watchmen or whatever it was. And that kind of really built my interest in this kind of whole genre, where it's like before, like I wasn't exposed to it, you know. And
it's still important. I mean, I don't want to. That's what we're here for. We don't want to lose that.
No, we did an interesting shop signing back in must have been like earlier this year, like February or March. I can't remember. Newmarket, Ontario, and the shop has a bar in the back, and he's got a TV up on the. It's more like a man cave or like a basement apartment with like everything a nerd would want. And I was talking with the owner afterwards, and he kind of pointed to a group of people on the couch kind of having drinks, and he's like, see all those guys? And they're like, yeah. He's like, none of them knew each other before this shop opened up. Like they all met through this community, and I think that's an amazing thing.
Word, I think, is community. Yeah. So free and community, I guess that's what we put in. It isn't the greatest, but it's better than hiring Hollywood agents to try and promote your book.
Oh no, for sure. Your community will be your biggest advocate. Yeah. You know, 100%.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, let's take a step back before we go to the future.
Oh, I guess it has.
I just want to hear about what got you into comics, art, creativity, and maybe list a few influences, or whoever wants to jump in.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah. I needed a job, so that's why I got it. I was working in animation, doing backgrounds for like Anna of Green Gables. This is like 99,
Really?
2000, 2001. And my friend Omar Dogan was working at Udon, and I had lost all jobs, everything. The animation studio went under, and he saw how good I was with background, so he offered me to work on the project he was working on, or take over. Sorry, because he had too many other, and it was actually Deadpool was the first comic I ever worked on, which was like 2001. This is like back in with Alvin Lee.
Did you get credits for that?
Yeah, I'm in there. Yeah,
Like as backgrounds or assists or
just
something
probably
like that?
art by Alvin Lee and then my name and stuff.
Yeah.
So and some other guys. So I did a lot of like fill-in art back then, and then I got into comics. So it's that's how I got into it. So it's very difficult, comics.
What are your influences? You're a big manga fan.
What's
Oh,
your
Yeah.
Well, what's that?
You say dang and
Influences.
stuff.
Yeah,
What's
to
that?
say dang.
Oh, yeah,
what made you
anime.
fall in love with
Oh well,
comics?
probably first was Frank Frazetta, like seeing his stuff when I was really young. Todd McFarlane, issue 6, the Hobgoblin, I think, and like when he came on the scene and with the image, with Marvel with the Spider-Man stuff, I was like, holy shit, this is the bomb. And then, J. Scott Campbell, Joe Mad, Jim Lee, like that. I was just done.
The
I bought
Image
all
Crew.
that stuff. The Image Crew just blew my mind. So, and I just bought all that stuff. So, yeah, those are my influences for that stuff. So,
He's comfortable, as you can tell. Really comfortable up here.
The,
I'm not in the comics.
he's
I don't
better-
read comics. I don't read comics anymore.
You're not reading comics
I
anymore?
don't. It's video games and.
We got to change that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, Eric.
I know I'm part of the Raid Studio, but like it's mostly more of an illustrator. That's more my thing. So as I learned working on comics, I'm like, comics are hard. I don't want to work that hard. I'd rather do illustrations.
That's true. He doesn't like to work very hard.
Yeah, he likes.
I love working
he likes
hard.
Splash pages. Yeah.
So if I get a writer,
Yeah, that's what he's got me.
That's
right?
why my creative soulmate.
Yeah. No, for comics, for me, I grew up loving. I guess that was Top Cow. It was Image and Top Cow. I had Mark Silvestri.
That was you growing up?
Well,
How young are you?
Sorry.
Holy
That was
shit.
that's like sure. I grew up with like the classics
Okay.
that everybody
Right.
did, but like I think when I read The Darkness and Witchblade, when those started off, I was just hooked on the medium. I think like there was something, as a 17 or 16-year-old.
Oh, I know what that something was.
with that art and the stories that they were telling that were like, they were hooks for me. They were deep hooks. I was really lucky. I got to work on the Darkness video game, so that kind of let me do something in that realm that really started pulling me into writing more. Like I did so much writing on the Darkness 2 that it was something that once that game was over, I kind of realized that I really wanted to write, and if I could do things in comics or in prose, that would be something I wanted to do, at least outside of my my day job, which I love as well.
did you meet Silvestri when you worked on Darkness?
I did. I met Sylvester.
How was that meeting when you're?
Man, he's fantastic. I mean, he's a
cool.
huge dude. He is massive. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments was for working on The Darkness 2 is Mike Patton, the lead singer of Faith No
Faith No
More.
More, yeah.
Yeah, he was the voice. And so at one point I found myself on a panel and I was sitting between Mike Patton and Mark Silvestri, and I was just like, okay, yeah, this is good.
This is
We're
your
good.
life now.
We're good.
Yep,
Yeah.
this is going well. Sorry.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Sylvester. He was when I was a kid reading comics, like he was on X-Men the run when I started reading them, and I loved his work too. It was amazing stuff. But I would say, like, I'll go back to the beginning. I mean, like, newspaper comics, clearly based on my outlet here, it was a huge influence on me. I grew up very much wanting to, in the 90s, all the Disney mayhem of, like, Beauty and the Beast and all that kind of stuff, and that whole set of films going forward. That's where I knew I wanted to be an animator. I was like, I want to draw, because I always loved drawing. Like my father was my main inspiration. I mean, he was like an artist, and I used to like look at his drawings as a kid. Like when he was a kid, he drew, and he kept them all in like this manila envelope. And I found it like above like the fridge, And I would like go, I remember going up like at dawn, like before my Cheerios, and I'd like get up in there and I'd open up all his big charcoal drawings of like knights and Marlboro ads, you know, he'd copy the drawings. Yeah, it was
That's
just
awesome.
really cool stuff. So I was just like, whoa, and then I'd try and do it. Of course I didn't do well, but he would help me and stuff. And so yeah, I always wanted to draw and then really wanted to get animation. But at the same time, I was working on my dad's comic. It's funny because I believe back in the day, Multibook used to supply.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So my dad ran Multibook.
Okay.
So I used to work there as like, you know, like a box carrier guy, you know, in the warehouse.
Child labor.
Child labor, yeah. So I grew up around comics too, right? So, but I remember when I was getting to the age of wanting to, you know, really get into it, it was around the Joe Mad time, the McFarlane stuff, the Liefeld stuff, like basically the same thing, right?
Mid to late 90s.
Yeah, like the big burst of like, holy cow, right? And so yeah, that was all massive influence on my inspiration into wanting to become an artist for sure.
Well, I mean, I see the Disney in your style, Calvin and Hobbes, or
Absolutely, yeah. You know, there was a time, and it was at the very beginning, at the very beginning of me releasing Forest Folk.
Like, no, I'm not.
Yeah, because I mean, I tell the story very proudly now. But I mean, the reason why Forest Folk was the way it was, I mean, I grew up reading Calvin and Hobbes and all the newspaper strips, obviously, but didn't touch them for like 30 years. And then like literally 8 years ago when I started it, my girlfriend at the time went to Costco and bought the big collection, right? And gave it to me for Christmas. And I was like, well, I remember scanning some of these, right? And I sat there and read the whole thing, like all 4 books. And then I got sued and I was like, I could take my 2 guys that I drew over here and then do something like that. And I could do, so that's why it all came to be. And 100%, like the big heavy ink brushes, a lot of it stylized comes from that. And fast forward to the first cons where people started walking by and it's all people like my age, right? Going, that looks familiar. They're like Calvin Hobbes. I'm like, no, it's mine. and then you just start saying no. I mean, of course, it's like it's an influence, right? I'm 100%. So I find that there's a lot of like Looney Tunes influence in there.
Oh, yeah,
there's
for
Disney
sure.
influence in there. There's Calvin Hobbes, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've actually fallen the wrong with Dax. I grew up first on newspaper comics, so Calvin and Hobbes, Garfield. I was a huge Garfield fan.
I liked Hagar the Horrible.
Hagar the Horrible, Mother Goose and Grimm. Like that was my bread and butter. I didn't actually pick up a Marvel or DC comic. I was more of a Marvel kid, to be honest. I didn't pick those up till I was probably like grade 8, around there, grade 7.
I think that's actually the sweet spot.
Yeah. And I remember
For that stuff.
I remember a friend was it was our lunch recess and we were going, he's like, I'm like, where are you going? He's like, oh, I'm going to go up to the variety store and pick up some comics. I'm like, comics? What? You mean newspaper? He's like, no, comics. And I went up with him. And I remember picking up my first ones, which was ElfQuest #1 by Wendy and Richard Pini through Epic, and West Coast Avengers, and then one other, I think it was Defenders Comics or something like that. And I got hooked that day. I went from, I think I was spending at one point growing up, I don't even know where I got the money from, to be honest with you, like doing chores around the house or whatever it was, but I was dropping probably $50 a month on 50 comics, because back then they were about 75 cents a pop. And I was voracious. I read everything. And and then it wasn't until I discovered, I think it was like Jose Garcia Lopez on a few Atom comics, I think, and then Arthur Adams was my big, brain explosion.
Yeah, he was like the first kind of cartoonish guy. I remember anyway.
Yeah, and he came out on the scene with Long Shot, and then he did the X-Men annuals, and that was a guy who was like, wow, this is amazing. And it's funny though, like, for me, I never made the correlation that I could actually do this as a career. It was just something where I was like, I love these things. These are great. And then people are like, what are you gonna do for a living? I'm like, oh, I'll be an architect, or I'll be like whatever. And then it wasn't until I went to Sheridan and I met a few classmates. They're like, oh, we're going to New York for Big Apple Comic Con. Do you want to come and try to get some work? And I'm like, you could do that? So it's like this weird disconnect in my head that I could actually make a living drawing comics, other than like I said, I was trying to do architecture or like fashion design or whatever. I was like, what can I do and draw? And then, once I went to that show, I got no work out of it. I met some great editors that were working at DC at the time. But that just kind of opened up my eyes to the possibility of being able to create my own road. And work wherever I wanted to, just drawing, whether it was for science fiction or superheroes or whatever it might be. And yeah, sadly, still there.
Okay, well, what's everybody got creatively coming up, and where would you like to be in the future? Like
Eric, give us a pitch.
5 years.
Well, Sheldon, SM Carter and I are working on our sci-fi cyberpunk thriller called Arden. It's,
We gotta work on our
I like how you're looking to him for validation.
help me.
You're doing good. You're doing good. Keep up.
It's a cinematic novella,
Yeah.
which is a term I coined to be like just a buzzword to throw around. We actually don't know what it means, but it's like a combination of prose, comic, and illustration. Basically, we wanted to kind of do something that we felt we were kind of contributing 50% each to. You know what I mean? Not just like a graphic novel, it's mostly drawing and then a few word bubbles, right? So
now it's like a few drawings.
now it's mostly a few drawings, mostly right. No, it's so we thought that'd be a really cool idea, and so that's our next project is that Fan Expo is the goal. So,
And I've some peel back the onion skin on this guy here. I've known him for like 30 years now, and he's been talking about Arden since I met him. So the fact that SM Carter, also known as Sheldon Carter, is helping this come to, it's going to be great. I mean, I've gotten some behind the scenes reading of it and some visual stuff. It looks really good. So yeah.
Cool. That's I guess a Kickstarter in August, right? So
Yeah, we're looking at Kickstart. So with Raid Press, the studio's been around for 21 years, but in 2017, we put out our first anthology as Raid Press. And over the pandemic, we started crowdfunding all our books. And now I think we have like 8 or 10 books, I can't remember now. And we have about 6 more lined up. I'll be doing a talk with another creator tomorrow night here about the back wall, about some historic comics we're putting out through Raid Press. But we're really using the platform to connect with creators and readers and get our stuff out there. And it's been fantastic. And to see these guys, you know, I don't know, I haven't known Eric as long, but I've heard for Arden as long.
Yeah, well, he's all he talks about.
You know, but I feel like going back to the earlier conversation, you know, I remember when Dax's first book came out in 2021, it spurred Eric to get his book out because there's that jealousy you were talking about, or that friendly competition.
no jealous, just
No.
love, just love.
Just love. But you know, I mean, you see something
Creative,
happening.
yeah.
You see the potential and you're like, oh, he did that.
It just reminds you of what you're not doing. So you're like,
Yeah.
oh,
And in a
okay.
friendly way,
all
right?
Yeah.
You
All right,
know?
cool.
Yeah.
What do you got, Dax?
Yeah.
I was about to say the same thing, but he did it for me. I'm working on volume 4 of Forest Folk. That's coming up. Probably, I'm going to say next year. We'll do a thing for that next year. And then I'm also working on I want to kind of lean into a bit of children's book stuff too. So I'm doing like an ABCs. I'm starting the very early process of making an ABCs right now, which is going to be a lot of fun. And just more stuff with Raid. There's the anthologies that are coming up. We got 5 and 6 apparently shooting off at the same time. So I'll be doing some pages for that with my other property. So yeah, it'll be good.
And the future? What?
The future?
Like,
I'm going to be a millionaire. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be so
you
good.
want that Calvin and Hobbes collection available at Costco, basically?
100%.
Oh,
No, I mean, I've already done, like, I've had some over the past, since this book has come out, it's the first book I've published and stuff like that. So I had the first time I looked at my book, that was like a bucket list thing. First time I smelled the glue in my own book, bucket list done. We've got some merch now, like there's pins and stuff like that. Like we've got some hats with like the badges and stuff. We have badges for like jackets and shirts. We have t-shirts
Why
and
didn't
stuff.
you wear that tonight?
Because I was trying to like look like
You wanna be
I'm at
the
an
art-
art. I'm at an art show. But the next thing that'll be like a big cap, and we just talked about it today, is like a toy or like a maquette or like the PVC
statue.
figure, the statue.
Yeah.
That's something that will feel pretty cool to be like, you know, it just feels like, you know, it's become something, you know, and every time I sit at the show now, like when I did my first book, I remember it was super cute because we had like 1,000 copies of it, and I'm like, I'm gonna sell all these, and we had 1,000 copies at the end of it, maybe 999, but like, but now it's like become like 3 books and pins and merch, and I've got stand-ups now. It's just learning this process, right? And now it just feels like it's a lot more of something, and it's kind of cool to know that I'm working towards that, and I would love, honestly, the thing that I get from this right now, I mean, long term, sure, a million, like trillions of dollars, sure. But for me right now, the greatest thing I get from cons and like interaction with fans is like genuine like stories about how like people are like reading my stuff. It's not like, you know, the cartoon thing I did for Marvel that I don't have a name on, right? It's they're coming up and saying, "Oh, this is my favorite character," and like it's wonderful stuff. It's stuff that you'll never forget. Yeah.
I hate the word intellectual properties, but you're creating icons.
Right. Well, I mean,
Ideally,
that would be sweet. But I mean, even if one kid thinks it's an icon, that's awesome. Like I had my first kid come up to me at the show last year or a couple months ago, and he said that he's gonna cosplay as like one of the characters. And I was
There
like,
you go. Yeah, if
just
somebody
like,
buys the toy,
Yeah.
you created an icon.
yeah. So
Well, that's the way it starts, right? Like I'm a firm believer. I know it's as cheesy as it sounds, but like your vision board or whatever it might be, like you put your idea out there, and if you're tenacious enough, you can make it happen. Like it's amazing how much I've seen you guys create your stuff, and like even the stuff that I've had on, like I want to do this. It might have taken me 10 years or 15 years, but now it's actually happening, right? And it's something about sticking to it and knuckling down and putting your work out
speaking
there.
of knuckling down, what are you getting up to next?
From the corporate side of things, I guess I'm currently doing a run on Flash for DC Comics, and trade paperback just came out of Deep Cuts, which is a jazz anthology I worked on, which was a lot of fun actually, through Image. And on my personal side of things, I'm way behind on, but I'm working on a graphic novel called Kookaburra, which is an Alice in Wonderland style adventure story, and that's like volume 1 of about 6. And then I'm also writing another graphic novel, which is kind of a bit of a black comedy. It's called Payaso, which is like a clown in the apocalypse. So
And both of those, are you open to have Raid published?
yeah, I'm creating a home for not only these guys but for myself. I want to get my stuff out there. I'd be lucky. I've worked with probably every publisher, and now it's being interesting being on the other side of the fence where I get to help people get their stuff out there and actually make sure, or at least try to create something where I know they're getting a good part of the deal. Like I've worked with places like Boom, and while they were great earlier in my career, I've never seen a royalty for half the companies I've worked for, because they all promise you back end or they promise you whatever.
It's called a foot in the door.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
It's what you got you a gig at Marvel.
You know, even Marvel DC books, before Disney bought out Marvel, I probably got a good paycheck. I see like Hawkeye there. I think my first royalty check for that was $15,000. I haven't seen one since, because Disney bought it, and then they lowered all they increased all the thresholds for royalties. So now it's harder for creators to get royalties on their books. So I'm like, well, if that's the way they're going to treat us, I'm just going to create my own thing. I have an avenue. Like I did a Kickstarter for my own book. I made $60,000.
It's great.
You know what I mean? 15, 20 of that will probably go towards the book. Another 10 will probably go to merch. And then I can probably, I sink some into the Raid, and then I pocket some for myself for lunch money.
That's where it shows that you can invest in yourself.
Yeah,
You created that brand.
Yeah. And
For someone starting out, that's
and
it is tough. Yeah,
it is tough. But this is the first
not easy.
year as a publisher. We've also hired on our first staff too, right? So it's like you're seeing the return on the investment that we're putting in now. So I'm excited.
Well, I talked enough or asked enough questions. We should open it up to the floor if anybody's got any questions.
Anyone?
Who's
So
gonna do
quiet.
it? Who's gonna do
Remember
it?
too, there's tons of books as well. So make sure we grab these guys later and get some signatures and some books. But yes, question here.
I was wondering, how do you guys stay motivated? We talked a little bit about that, about like talk about the days where you just don't feel like doing it. How do you get through that? Do you just keep going? Do you keep plowing through it? Do you have like a ritual? Do you have a certain way of working that you find helps you?
I'm either 100% yes, I'm gonna plow through this and keep going, or I take the rest of that day off. and this is a me time, and then just the guilt of that fires me up for the next day. Do you know what I mean? Like Like, oh, I took some time I shouldn't have taken. But usually if I find like if I'm on a deadline, I'm pretty good when it comes to like deadline work. Like if I'm working for a client, I'll knock it out pretty professionally. Problem is when I'm by myself and doing, okay, now today is just my time, then it becomes like I got to do shopping and laundry and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's you just got to find it in you somewhere. You want to get it done. No one's going to draw my comic for me. So unless you want to do it, you want to do it?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I've been freelancing now so long. It's kind of like even a bad day, you kind of have to knuckle down and do
Get
the
something
work.
done.
Like, I know I can produce work on a bad day that's good, if that makes sense. But there has been days where like, if I keep going and going at it, where like it's just me that day, then I'll just pull a Dax and I'll just be like,
It's called pulling a Dax. Write it down.
I'm gonna go read a book. I'm gonna go watch a movie. I clearly need to recharge or whatever it is. But and then for like personal work, I'm not sure if Dax does this or not, but like I try to compartmentalize. Give in the prime when things are firing on all cylinders, I'll be like, okay, every Monday I'm working on my own thing or whatever it is. I give myself a day where I'm like, no matter who's calling me, who's angry at me, I'm gonna work on my thing. That hasn't happened in a while, like, so I'll be honest there, like, 'cause I'm busy with a lot of things. But when things are working out well, that's what I try to do, you know, because no one's gonna give you your time other than yourself, basically, to work on these things. Gentlemen,
Those are great answers.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing I would say is that you could listen to procrastination. Like the feeling of having to procrastinate, there's something there. Maybe you have to work something out still. Like if it's every day, then maybe that's a problem. you need to take some discipline. But I think whenever you hit those little ruts, maybe it's the world spirit trying to tell you something that you need a little more time to. Maybe you need to watch a show or play a game or listen to some music.
Monster Hunter's calling my name. I got to play it.
yeah.
There you go.
I do feel like there is a bit of a, I know, like having worked on like juggling a lot of projects too, is like where sometimes it's a very artsy fartsy answer, but it's like when it's right, when that feeling is right, I will get into it. And if I'm not dedicating myself to it right off the bat, it's because life is telling me, no, you need to recharge or gain some inspiration. And it's usually true. Like when I do hit the ground running, I'm usually just going at it and creating. So,
Do you want to get in on that?
I actually thought you were going to say listen to War with Art. By the way.
I was just going to say that. You just took that away. Sometimes I listen to podcasts called War with Art. Anyway, yeah, I don't know, George. We know George, so George Spanos.
Being in the comic.
It's from War with Art. Oh, I didn't know that. I was just making that.
I've met so many prospective comic creators, some super talented people over the years, but I've known more that do not produce. They show me some really cool drawings. They have some cool concepts.
yeah.
They want to be comic artists, but creators create. And it's the guy that comes to me with that pile of pages or pile of drawings. And I'm like, okay, whether you can get an audience for this or not, you've got something here. But
Yeah. No, it's hard. It's like, it's not just.
Yeah. I mean, it's 10% talent, 90% drive, right?
Yeah. I know a lot of great artists who have never seen the light of day just because either through their own inhibitions or, not thinking the work is good enough, never actually want to put it out there, which is
Analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
So,
Yo,
Question?
Give this gentleman the mic.
use your deep voice. Just project.
So I got a question for you. What is your earliest creative artistic memory, probably from childhood, that you can remember when you came online?
When you're like your creativity.
Sure. Like, what is your
Not when I
earliest
signed
memory that
into
really
the
kind
internet.
of sparked?
Yeah. Okay.
like, where we want to be an artist, or
It can be anything, but yeah.
Because I don't have to wait for Michael to jump in. For me, it was drawing. Oh man, what G-Force, but Battle of the Planets. When I was a kid around the table, because I'd just seen probably one episode of the anime on at like 8 o'clock in the morning when I was like 7 years old or something like that, and I think it was called G-Force on American TV. I can't remember, but it was my first experience with anime. Same thing with Astro Boy too. Like those two things. I remember just sitting there and you get like the printout papers, or I don't mean didn't even have the printout at that time. That's how old I am. But like, I remember having scrap paper and sitting there and drawing the war scenes of like GoBots and Astro Boy and all that kind of stuff. And that's when I just, like, nobody was telling me to do it. I was just doing it. So it was kind of like where I just had an actual love for it and I wanted to do it. So that was probably my coming to it. Yeah.
G-Force is awesome.
I
love G-Force.
The yo-yo bomb thing that she had was wicked. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking for me, for storytelling at least, it was probably playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? As a kid, right? DMing, and like all of a sudden you're starting to tell somebody a story, and they're kind of getting into it. You're like, well, I'm creating this. I'm creating these characters. I'm creating this world. And it's like the first time I did that, it was like, okay, I want to tell stories to people that like telling stories. It's cool. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Just I just remember drawing forever.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
Crayons. I did a lot of drawing, a lot of like scuba divers underwater. I don't know why.
You drew scuba divers?
Scuba divers underwater. Like I loved underwater for some reason. I won a competition where it was for the Bon Air trailers for camping. Mm-hmm. So I drew we had a competition in grade school and I won it. It's like grade 2.
I got one of those.
Yeah. Not that was gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna be an advertisement forever, but I don't know. I just always been drawing. I think when I started to pick up the comics, and I started kind of coming up with my own characters. I think that's when I started to realize like I had a lot of wild ideas, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be a character. And
I've seen
not
them,
Arden.
I've seen
this is way earlier, and I was like,
pre-Arden.
Yeah. But I just feel like that's when I started to be like, yeah, I want to pursue this. I don't know what it is. I have no idea how to do any of it, but when I started to create characters, I guess same as D&D, you kind of create scenarios. So you're like, oh, I can do this. This is cool. Where I'm excited about what I'm doing. I think that was the key. So,
for myself, I mean, I'm like that, Eric, in the sense that I mean, drawing as long as I can remember. I would draw things around the house, different things, not scuba divers, but various other things. But I think for me, I guess the storyteller aspect of it for me was when it must have been grade school, around grade 2 or 3, I created an anthology of like Sunday Funny characters with another classmate who was also an artist. And I remember we drew it and then we laminated the whole book. Like the whole thing's waterproof. So the scuba divers could actually read it. But we created, I think we divided it each 100 pages or something. And
in grade 2, you did 100 pages of laminated work?
Yeah.
Man.
Maybe grade 4.
Okay.
Around there somewhere.
Right, that's a bit,
but it was
better. It's a bit better. Grade 2, you're like this big.
It was like, I actually tried to dig it up and redraw because I recreated like my own versions.
That'd be cool.
Of all these other characters that existed. So for Mother Goose and Grimm, I had Brother Dog and whatever. But it was me riffing off all of my favorites and creating my own versions of them. And yeah, a lot of fun.
Good question.
Yeah.
Not bad, Greg.
Do we have another question?
Yeah, let's go.
Just give me a minute. So the microphone is helpful for the online recording, so that's why it's not that we can't project, it's that we're trying to capture all the voices.
Sheldon's just running away. He doesn't want to answer this one.
Hello.
Was it for Sheldon, that question?
Dear Sheldon.
Ramón was saying, is this working? Ramón was saying that working in an artist collective was a good opportunity to like build synergy and like opportunities. Do you still look for input from other people around you, or is that sort of like tapered off over time?
I listen to no one else.
Yeah. No, he doesn't. But no, I think that's I've been in the industry for 24 years now, I guess, professionally. You're probably maybe we're the same, I guess. And you're maybe a year ahead of me. Yeah. 1 year ahead of me.
One.
But so we're kind of like old dogs at this point for like knowing how we workflow and all that kind of stuff. But I would definitely say the second that we're around each other, I mean, I work from home. I'm a satellite member of RAID. So I live in the Niagara area. So I don't go into the studio. But anytime that we have get-togethers, we just had a RAID retreat, which is where we all go up to a cabin and we all get like hang out and creatively discuss stuff. And I like literally just have a sketchbook page filled of like ideas of what I'm going to do and like bouncing ideas off people and stuff like that. So I can only imagine. I mean, I've worked in studios before and they were the best experiences creatively of my life. Like I made leaps and bounds art art-wise in those times I was in the studio, because you can talk to and feed off of everybody that's around you. It's very important. If you can do it and you are in that space and you are an artist and you're wanting to improve, if you can do it, it's the best way to do it for sure.
Yeah.
Because anytime you talk to anyone, you've got to, no one loves to hear criticism of their stuff, but the better you can get at hearing a little bit of that, you're just gonna, you're gonna elevate. And if you're around people that are cool and friendly and they want the best for you,
not us,
not these guys necessarily, but you'll definitely, like, you'll grow big time.
Yeah.
Big
I think
time.
also, I mean, the cool thing about comics is like, and I can probably speak to all of us in this regard, is like, even just going to shows, and that's a community, and that's just a larger studio, like walking around. I know I do like a couple of shows, especially artist-driven shows like Heroes in North Carolina, Lightbox in Pasadena, TCAF in Toronto, happening this weekend actually. These are very creative and artist-driven and writer-driven shows where, like, I remember I walk around these places and I just get blown away by the talent that is out there. Like, I feel like a talentless hack after I do any of these shows, but then you're also at the same time super inspired because you're like, oh my God, like there's so much I could do. And like, I know Eric will do a show and he'll be like, I gotta go home and draw. I gotta go do this. He doesn't, but he feels that way, but, and I think this, whether it's the community as a studio or just a few friends getting together, or just doing these shows and putting your work out there, getting fan feedback, engaging with people, and just talking with the creators around you too. Like, I remember a lot of my earlier shows, I didn't know what I was doing. I did a lot of gaming shows, which are a bit of a different beast. And when I did my first comic shows, I was just sitting beside people, and you just start meeting people, making friends. And a lot of my first work actually came from meeting writers and other artists at these shows. Like, my first work from Marvel was Scotty Young, who was a fan of my webcomic. He came to me at San Diego, he said, I love your stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, Scotty Young loves my book. And then, like, when he wanted to write, he called me up and said, hey, I want you to draw my first book that I'm writing for Marvel. And I was like, so it's like all these little relationships, and I call them like planting seeds and watching them grow. Like, just go out there and engage, get inspired, get critiques, and just talk to people. I think it's like the larger studio, basically, at the end of the day. And silence.
Another question?
That's it. That's all we got.
Thanks for staying awake. That was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming.
Guys will hang out for a while, I think. So if you want to ask them a question personally,
No, I'm
or
done.
have
I'm
them
done.
sign a book.